You're listening or watching Radio Afinju. The time is 6 p.m.
Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfínjú. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfínjú. Rédíò. Àfínjú. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfínjú. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo Àfínjú. Lórí WhatsApp. Àfínjú. Instagram. Àfínjú. Facebook. Àfínjú. Lórí X. Àfínjú. Lórí YouTube. Àfínjú. Lórí TikTok. Àfínjú. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfínjú. Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfínjú. Rédíò. Àfínjú. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfínjú. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo Àfínjú. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfínjú. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo Àfínjú. Rédíò Àfínjú. Rédíò Àfínjú. Rédíò Àfínjú.
Stay informed with news on Radio Afinju.
This is the world news on Radio Afinju.
First, a look at the highlights. Nigeria, Brazil commence strategic dialogue. Museveni to seek re-election as Uganda president. UK Starmer vows to press on with welfare reforms despite opposition. Good evening and welcome to the World News on Radio Afinju. My name is Pearl Durotoye. The news in detail. Nigeria is set to sign more than 30 memoranda of understanding with Brazil as the second session of the Nigeria-Brazil Strategic Dialogue Mechanism kicked off in Abuja. The Senior Special Assistant to the President of Media and Communications Office of the Vice President, Stanley Nkwocha, announced the arrival of Brazil's Vice President, Geraldo Alckmin, to begin the three-day state visit. According to the statement, the visit is aimed at deepening bilateral ties between the two countries as the MOU is expected to cover a broad range of strategic sectors, including defense and security cooperation, agricultural technology transfer, energy collaboration and transition initiatives, cultural and educational exchange programs, and trade facilitation and industrial development. Brazil's Vice President Alckmin and his wife Maria Alckmin and members of the Brazilian delegation were received by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the State House Conference Center. The Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Ibrahim Hadejia, alongside governors, ministers, presidential aides, and members of the Nigerian and Brazilian diplomatic corps were also present to welcome Alckmin. The three-day event will provide a platform for President Bola Tinubu's administration to tap into new investment flows, facilitate technical cooperation, and open pathways for enhanced strategic engagements for businesses. A bill to extend the capital component implementation of the 2024 budget from June 30th to December 31st, 2025 has passed second reading. Deputy Majority Leader Ibrahim Halims, during plenary, presented the bill titled A Bill for an Act to Amend the 2024 Appropriation Act to further extend the capital components of the Act from 30th June 2025 to 31st December 2025 and for related matters. According to the House of Representatives Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas, the extension was necessary because the 2024 budget has not been fully implemented. The bill was passed through voice vote and referred to the Committee on Supply for further action. Recall, in February, the House of Representatives passed the nation's 2025 national budget pegged at 54.99 trillion naira, a 99.96% increase from the 2024 budget of 27.5 trillion naira. President Bola Tinubu had initially proposed 49.7 trillion naira, later adjusting it to 54.2 trillion naira, but the National Assembly eventually approved 54.99 trillion naira. Meanwhile, two House of Representative members, Peter Akpanke, who was elected on the People's Democratic Party (PDP) platform, representing Obanliku Obudu Bekwara Federal Constituency of Cross River State, and Paul Namchi, elected under the Labour Party (LP), representing Enugu East Isilzo Federal Constituency of Enugu State, have defected to the ruling All Progressives Congress (APC). Akpanke and Namchi formally announced their switch during plenary, with their defection letters read by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas. Both lawmakers attributed their defections to internal crises within their former parties and their desire to support and align with the policies and programs of the APC federal government. Speaker Abbas congratulated the duo on their new political move, while their decision was greeted with applause by APC members in the chamber. The national chairman of Social Democratic Party, Shehu Gabam, along with two members of the National Working Committee, Nandi Clarkson, National Auditor, and Chukwuma Uchechukwu, National Youth Leader, have been suspended over allegations of gross financial misconduct, embezzlement, misappropriation, and diversion of party funds. The National Working Committee of the Social Democratic Party approved their suspension as contained in a statement issued and made available to newsmen by the party's National Public Secretary, Rufus Ayenigba. Ayenigba alleged that the misappropriation funds amount to hundreds of millions of naira, including donations and resources realized from the sales of nomination forms in the 2023 general elections and other funds from the party accounts. He noted that the suspension of the officers has been communicated to the Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, and all relevant agencies. He said that the suspension of the officers takes immediate effect. The Speaker of the Cross River State House of Assembly, Elvet Ayambem, has condemned the communal clash between Boje and Isobendege communities in Boki local government area of the state, describing the incident as barbaric and unacceptable. The State Assembly has therefore demanded the immediate deployment of security forces to the area to prevent further escalation. The Chief Press Secretary to the Speaker, Matthew Okache, in a statement in Calabar, noted that the resolution followed a motion of urgent public importance moved by member representing Boki 1 State Constituency, Bete Obi, notifying the House of the ongoing land dispute between the two neighboring communities, which has now degenerated into a deadly conflict. He stressed that the conflict has led to several casualties, including the beheading of a man from Boje, and warned that if immediate action is not taken, the violence could spiral into a full-scale communal war. Away from Nigeria, Uganda's ruling party said the country's long-running president, Yoweri Museveni, will seek re-election in polls due early next year. Reports said the 80-year-old had been wildly expected to try and extend his almost four-decade rule over the East African country. The opposition has faced a mounting crackdown ahead of the general election in January, with leading activists and politicians intimidated, abducted and detained. Museveni's National Resistance Movement, NRM party, said in a statement on its website that the leader seeks to retain the positions of the NRM chairman and party presidential flag bearer in the 2026 elections. NRM chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Tanga Odoy, confirmed to reporters that Museveni would declare an interest for the president as the party flag bearer in the forthcoming general elections. In Asia, Chinese troops will parade through Beijing's Tiananmen Square alongside aircraft flypasts and high-tech weaponry to mark 80 years since the end of World War II. Millions of Chinese people were killed during a prolonged war with Imperial Japan in the 1930s and 40s, which merged with the global conflagration following Tokyo's attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Beijing's Communist Party has held a series of blockbuster events in recent years to commemorate its wartime resistance, vowing that China will never be brought to its knees again in such a way. According to the official at China's military commission, Wu Zik, the parade on September 3rd will see President Xi Jinping inspect troops in Tiananmen Square. The Kremlin has said Russian President Vladimir Putin will attend, and Chinese officials said other world leaders are also expected to take in the same. Still in Asia, Thailand's Durotoye party, which left the ruling coalition last week, said it would seek a parliamentary no-confidence vote against Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra and her cabinet in another blow to the embattled premier. Next week's planned motion will be the first parliamentary test for 38-year-old Paetongtarn since coming under intense public pressure over a handling of an escalating border row with neighboring Cambodia, which left the ruling alliance led by a Pheu Thai party hanging on to power by a thread. Paetongtarn is also facing judicial scrutiny after a group of senators petitioned the Constitutional Court and a national anti-graft body with a wide remit to investigate her conduct. Decisions from either bodies could lead to her removal. Alongside, anti-government groups are planning a street protest starting Saturday, demanding her to resign. Durotoye withdrew its support for the government last Wednesday, citing the risk of a loss of Thai sovereignty and integrity from the leak of a phone conversation between Paetongtarn and Cambodia's former premier Hun Sen. Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte has described the impeachment complaint against her as nothing more than a scrap of paper in a formal response to the Senate, saying the case was baseless and should be dismissed for being unconstitutional. The impeachment, widely seen as a test of political alliances, comes amid an acrimonious falling out between Duterte and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. that has sparked a broader power struggle ahead of the 2028 presidential election. Marcos, who has distanced himself from the case, is limited to a single term but is expected to groom a successor to run. Duterte, the daughter of former President Rodrigo Duterte, is viewed as a strong rival contender if she avoids impeachment. In February, the House of Representatives voted to impeach Duterte for betrayal of public trust and high crimes, sending the case to the Senate. On June 11th, the Senate returned the case to the House shortly after convening as an impeachment court. In the United Kingdom, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has vowed to press on with his reforms to the welfare system despite opposition by more than 100 of his lawmakers who were threatening a major rebellion over the changes. In what would be a major blow to Starmer, a year after he won a large majority in Parliament, Labour lawmakers have spearheaded an effort to kill the government's welfare plan at a vote due next week, saying it failed to provide support for disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. The British leader, on his way to a NATO summit to discuss the Middle East and Ukraine, said there was no alternative to reforming a system he described as broken and one that trapped people on benefits at levels of spending the state could not cope with. Due to ballooning welfare spending, which had been on course to top $129 billion by 2030. Labour said in March it planned to cut more than £5 billion from its welfare budget by 2029-2030. The government argues its proposed welfare cuts would be backed by support for people using benefits to get back into work. In Europe, a Russian missile attack on Ukraine's southeastern Dnipropetrovsk region has killed at least 9 people, damaged civilian infrastructure, and wounded dozens of train passengers. Governor Serhiy Lysak disclosed that the two-wave strike killed 7 in the regional capital of Dnipro, where the blast wave also shattered train carriage windows and showered passengers with broken glass. He said nearly 70 people, including 10 children, were injured, adding the numbers could still rise. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha called on Kyiv's Western partners to respond to the attack. NATO leaders are currently in The Hague for an alliance summit where President Volodymyr Zelensky hopes to secure more military support against Russia's full-scale invasion launched in 2022. In the Americas, President Donald Trump sharply rebuked Israel for its military response following a ceasefire deal and accused both Israel and Iran of violating the agreement just hours after he announced it. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz had said he had ordered the military to mount new strikes on targets in Tehran in response to what he said were Iranian missiles fired in a blatant violation of the ceasefire. Iran denied launching any missiles and said Israel's attacks had continued for an hour and a half beyond the time the ceasefire was meant to start. Trump, who had announced a ceasefire earlier today with a post on Truth Social, told reporters Israel launched its strikes almost immediately after the agreement was reached.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that? I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning.
Trump added that Iran and Israel had been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing before turning away from cameras and heading to his helicopter. The high-profile trial of Sean Diddy Combs is approaching its final stretch, with both teams poised to rest their cases as soon. Closing arguments are tentatively expected to begin on Thursday, after which jurors will be tasked with deciding the fate of the music mogul, who faces life in prison if convicted. The prosecution's 31st and last witness is currently on the stand, and defense lawyers indicated they do not plan on calling their own witnesses to testify in Manhattan federal court. It was learned that over 7 weeks of testimony, prosecutors drew connections across a web of witnesses, phone records and travel bookings, a bit to show that Combs was the kingpin of an enterprise comprised of high-ranking employees that carried out crimes including bribery, arson and kidnapping to enforce his power and satisfy his every desire. In the Middle East, Israeli forces killed at least 29 Palestinians in Gaza and ordered new evacuations in further bloodshed shortly after Israel and Iran reached a ceasefire to end a 12-day air war. The Israel-Iran deal announced by U.S. President Donald Trump raised hopes among Palestinians of an end to over 20 months of war in Gaza that has wildly demolished the territory and displaced most residents with malnutrition widespread. But deadly violence continued with little respite. Abu Nasser of the Al-Auda hospital in Nusayrat in central Gaza said it had received 19 dead and 146 injured from crowds who tried to reach a nearby aid distribution center of the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Abu Nasser told reporters the casualties resulted from gunfire. The head of the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency said he may have to take an unprecedented decision about the services it provides if funding is not found soon to end the cash flow crisis. Felipe Lazzarini said the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East faced a $200 million deficit. Lazzarini gave no further details of what the decision might entail. The United States was UNRWA's biggest donor, but President Donald Trump announced broad cuts in foreign aid, including to UNRWA, earlier this year. Other Western governments' aid budgets are also under pressure following calls by Trump for more spending on defense as Russia's war in Ukraine drags on. Now talking sports, Middlesbrough have anointed former Luton Town manager Rob Edwards as their new head coach. Edwards, 42 years old, moves to the Riverside Stadium on a 3-year deal as the replacement for Michael Carrick, who was dismissed earlier this month. He led Luton to the Premier League in 2023 but could not avoid relegation from the top flight 12 months later and was then dismissed by the Hatters in January, where they were 20th in the Championship. His job is now to improve a Borough team who ended last season in 10th place, 4 points outside the playoff spots. After guiding Forest Green Rovers into League One for the first time in their history in his first EFL post, having managed AFC Telford United in National League North and worked at age group level for Wolves and England, Edwards moves up to the Championship with Watford in the summer of 2022. He did not last long at Vicarage Road, 11 games to be precise, but their loss was Luton's gain. Before we go, here again are the highlights. Nigeria is set to sign more than 30 Memoranda of Understanding with Brazil as the second session of the Nigeria-Brazil Strategic Dialogue Mechanism kicked off in Abuja. Elsewhere, Uganda's ruling party says the country's long-running president, Yoweri Museveni, will seek re-election in polls due early next year. And in the United Kingdom, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has vowed to press on with his reforms to the welfare system despite opposition by more than 100 of his lawmakers who are threatening a major rebellion over the changes.